One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Welcome to another intoxicating version of Security Guy Radio with Chuck, Hydra Hooch Harold, and Paul.
God. Paul Tally-Ho Bristow.
Is Mr. Bristow's microphone on there, Brian? Just want to get a thumbs up from
Yeah, I don't want Chuck being louder than me.
No, I have to be louder than you. Because nobody can understand you. That's the problem.
That's what I've heard.
You have a good weekend?
Yes.
Anything exciting
Yes,
happen?
very nice. San Diego.
I just got back from Seattle and Portland. Big road trip.
Yes, good for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything there?
Well, no. I'm not going to say anything because I passed out a lot of business cards in the Great Northwest. And a lot of my friends up there listen carefully to the show.
So if anybody's listening, call in.
Yes, call in. But no relatives, please.
Tell us what Chuck was doing.
It's all on Facebook. It's all documented. It's all documented on your wireless device.
Oh, yes.
Now, it's funny you should mention that everything is documented on a wireless device because it just so happens that today we're going to talk about wireless, internet, security, hacking, all that kind of stuff. Did you see this article about Internic? Is that the proper term?
Internic?
Actually, it's ICANN.
Oh, ICANN. That's
kind
our
of
secret.
like I can't, but I can.
That's
that
our
was
secret
close.
guest who is going to tell us that we don't know what we're talking about. That's why we brought him in. They want to take all the internet addresses that America kind of controls and say, let's come up with a bunch of nice guys from all these access powers to decide what the addresses are going to be.
But I did hear that Al is complaining about that because he invented it. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. I did hear that.
And that's an American.
Well, I posted a couple weeks ago that I think that's really one of the most serious, if not the most serious threat to your security.
Yeah.
And what if everybody decides to get together and say, you know what, .Israel, I don't think we should have that anymore. I think we don't need that address. And they could take countries off the map. They could take people out and make them disappear. I think it's a very bad idea.
And do you really want the British government involved with you?
Well, it's a private corporation now, but it's quasi, regulated by the government. I think it's just a really bad idea. And there's enough hacking problems right now, and enough internet problems, enough threats and viruses and all that kind of stuff that do we need more problems?
Yeah, no, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big problem. But what do we know? We're just a couple of guys that people don't pay anymore,
nothing.
And that's why we bring in the experts. Like my guest today, Mr. Scott Goldman, the co-founder and CEO of TextPower, alert and authentic using text messaging. And Scott is a veteran of the wireless industry, a dynamic entrepreneur executive with deep knowledge and personal contacts at the highest levels. Now, that is very intriguing. Very intriguing, Scott, the highest levels.
Are you able to tell us later on?
I'd have to kill you afterwards, but
Very
let's go
interesting.
I've
ahead
had a
if you
few
need to.
people like that.
He's worked closely with global companies in development, planning, and launch of advanced wireless technologies and services. And I remember that great story you told me about GoWireless.com.
Mm-hmm.
That you registered that how many years ago?
I did. I registered that probably about 15 years ago, and I sold that domain to a very nice buyer.
Very nice buyer.
Who
Remember
now-
that number was
that's
very
right.
nice.
Who now owns the website GoWireless.com, and I congratulate him on it.
See, I wish I registered food.com and music.com.
Yeah.
Poor sites 2020.
Well, hindsight being 2020.
Oh, Mr. Scott. So a couple weeks ago we had a guy on here, basic web stuff we were talking about, basic web security.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting, how your GPS is on Facebook and people know where you are. And my 12-year-old niece is saying, hey, I'm going to bed right now and here's my address. Oops,
Yeah.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg, really, right?
It is.
I mean, I'm not really kidding when I say that I'm worried about the registration of all the web addresses given to some third-party voting committee or, who knows. I mean, it's just going to be a mess. But tell us what's going on now, because there's some really serious stuff out there. I mean, I know China's a big problem. It still is. I got an email the other day. Some guy in China wants to register securityguide.com.china.edu.pp.
Well,
I don't know.
The question is, how much is he offering? And there's a check coming from Nigeria.
Well, no, remember at Fox we had somebody rip off
Right,
the
you
News
can,
Corp
you can
website.
retire any day now. Paul.
Yeah.
No, there's actually, I mean, oops, sorry. See, I hit the, what didn't I say? Don't hit the spring, and I hit the spring myself. It looks bogus, but on the other hand, I checked out the code that says where it came from us, and so far it looks like it did come from some server in China and so on and so forth. But that's a big enough problem, right? Cyber wars and all that kind of stuff. But Scott's going to tell us today about things like social engineering websites, just basic carelessness, stupid things people do. So tell us a little about your background, how you got into this, and
Sure.
where you came from.
Yeah, actually, I've been involved in the wireless industry, and as a result of wireless, then in the internet industry for over 25 years. It started actually with a demo that somebody did for me. I wanted to be on radio, believe it or not. I was interested in becoming a disc jockey, and I answered an advertisement at a company in New York. And during that process, somebody dialed a phone number. You remember those dial phones? Somebody actually
The old dial phones, that's right.
phone number.
Don't look that old.
And there was a gizmo on the table right next to the phone. And after he dialed that number, a couple of seconds later, that gizmo, which we now know as a beeper, started beeping. And I was intrigued. And I said, "Oh, did you make that happen when you dialed that number?" And yeah. And
So you were around when PageNet was launched. That was the big company.
Oh, absolutely.
All the cops had pagers at PageNet. I was
Sure.
the first one in my police department to get one. It was a big deal.
PageNet was one of the first nationwide companies. They bought a frequency, which is basically a channel, like a TV channel, that worked all over the country, and they were able to provide nationwide coverage, which was a big advance at the time.
Very effective, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I've been involved in wireless. I've helped companies all over the world and many governments all over the world in launching, building, and in some cases selling cellular systems and all different kinds of wireless data systems. And in the process got very involved in the security of those systems. And my company now, TextPower, is actually launching an authentication mechanism, which means a way to verify somebody's identity. We're launching an authentication mechanism that uses text messaging at a big event in a couple of weeks where there are going to be a whole bunch of big cheeses from the financial innovation industry.
What will you be authenticating? Text message, anything that goes to the wireless, you're going to authenticate?
Actually, what it's going to authenticate is any type of a login on a web page. So whether it's for Bank of America or for your local plumbing company, whatever it is that you have an account where you sign in, you have a login ID and a password, there is a common form of authentication called two-factor authentication, meaning, and this is very common if you have a Google account or a Gmail or a Facebook account, two-factor means that the first factor of authentication is the password. Every system always has a password. And the second factor of authentication is something you have. So two factors is something you have and something you know. And in this case, you know the password, and the thing that you have in our case is you're going to use your cell phone to send a text message into our system. We will be coordinating with all of these websites, and the handshake between our system and those web pages will authenticate whether or not the right user sent the right text message from the right phone, and will verify that that user is the correct user for that particular ID and password, and either grant or deny access to the site.
So I have something now with Quicken where you go into the online page to pay your bills, and you push a button, and they call your cell phone.
Right.
They speak a code, then you put the code back into the site.
Right.
Similar. And I think, doesn't Facebook use random code generators and just kind of give it these random numbers, and you have to plug that from your phone? They text it to you.
That's right.
Put it back in the website. This is a little different.
This is a little
It's
different.
going back through the system itself.
quicker.
We're not putting it back in.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Chuck.
Right.
And in fact, what we did was we took this model and turned it upside down. The normal way that it works is that Facebook, Google, whoever it is, they send a text message to your phone,
Right.
and then you see that code on your phone. You have to type it in on the computer. The way that our system, that's called Text Key, works is the code actually is displayed right there on the web page in plain view for everybody to see, but you have to text that code from your phone.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And,
Why is that better?
Well, the reason that we did it that way is because we kind of came at it from a different perspective. We came at it from the text messaging perspective as opposed to from the security perspective. And it was one of these kind of slap of the head moments when we looked at how everybody else was doing it. Sending the message to the phone doesn't allow you as the website host, if you will, to verify that the message actually landed on the right phone.
Oh.
So, we see all of these hackings in the UK
Sure.
where, the royalty family, the royals and so forth, their messages have been hacked. So you can't verify that a message actually landed on the correct phone. You can't verify that the message actually got there. We looked at it from the text messaging standpoint and said, hey, wait a minute, these guys are doing it backwards.
Yeah.
You really should be sending the message from the phone into the system as opposed to sending it to the phone. You can verify the fingerprint of the phone.
Right.
You can verify the mobile number of the phone. You can verify the code. You can verify that it only came from that phone. A much better, much smarter way of doing
That's
it.
right. It's brilliant. It's so simple. It's brilliant.
Well,
so am I going to catch?
We hope so.
Are we catching the SIM card and all those numbers on here? Anything you want to capture, it's going to authenticate that phone is yours.
That's
I
right.
mean, there's a lot of programs I use to do investigations. What's that one I use called? I can't remember. Anyway.
Anonymous.
Oh, anonymous texting. Yeah, and I send a text back, and you think it's coming from another number. And you wouldn't know the difference.
Right.
And then there's other phone.
It's called spoofing.
Spoofing is another program that you can actually change your caller ID, and I can actually send you his phone number, Paul's phone number, and think he's calling you and want you guys call each other and say what's going on. It's unless you have some kind of sophisticated hardware, it doesn't work. So.
Well, in our system, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And a big reason it doesn't work is because we piggyback on the carrier's security before the message even gets to us. It's already been cleared by the carrier as coming from the right phone.
So there's no way somebody could sort of capture that signal out of,
there's not.
out of air and record it.
That's right, Paul.
Now, is that going to be a mobile app that we're going to download on our phones?
Actually, you don't have to.
in?
Yeah, every phone comes with 2 apps built in. Every phone in the world comes with only 2 apps common to all of the phones. One is actually the phone calling app that you use, and the other one is text messaging. Every phone already has it. So there's no special app. You don't have to download anything. We don't have to update for different platforms. You simply send a text message into our number, and it appears right there on the screen of the
I think
website.
securityguyradio.com. Let me say that name again, securityguyradio.com.
Did you say securityguyradio.com?
I believe I did. Please log in and listen to my website. Please. I'm going to start groveling pretty soon. Well, but we should look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We should. So we're going to do some authentication stuff on our site, and we'll use your stuff and put it on
We'll
there.
be happy to do
Oh,
it
that's
for you.
fabulous.
Yeah,
Very good. All right, so tell us how we're all going to really get screwed in the next coming years with security on the web. What's going on?
You know, there's a saying in the security world that there are only 2 kinds of companies, those that have been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked.
Oh, interesting.
The simple fact of the matter is that hacking is so prevalent and it is so under the surface that what we really see as, lay people in the market is only really the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge amount going on that a lot of the companies and banks and financial institutions don't even want people to know about because it could be frightening when it gets to that level.
The target caper.
Exactly right. And there are others that are probably not of the same magnitude because eventually they would get exposed. But certainly there are many that have been that have intruded on people, intruded on websites, on databases, on company websites, on financial records, medical records that we don't even know about. A lot of that stuff gets stolen. It gets sold on the black market. You can buy a complete credit card, social security number, phone number, address on the black market online for about $25, and then
that's it. $25.
That's
wow.
it. And then what you do with it from there, you've already got all of that information. Hello, Amazon, or is any place else, go shopping, have it delivered to your house, and so forth. So it is a very kind of a dangerous environment, and people need to take precautions if they are going to do all of this stuff online safely.
Here's what I don't get. Why wasn't somebody on top of this from the beginning? You don't build security. You don't build a website and then stick something on top of the code. You got to put it in.
It's called the Affordable Healthcare.
Well, that's true. There's one way. That's how they built it. That's correct. Well, you know what I'm saying. I mean, you got to really start thinking about these things from the ground up. And I don't know how we really missed the boat on this. It's a little bit scary. Mr. Bryan, are we ready for a cue there? Oh, 1 minute. He raised his finger too early. I'm sorry.
Actually, Affordable Healthcare. Now, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, what's with that website?
In the Affordable Health Care Act?
Not that anybody hasn't talked about this before.
Well, you're talking about just the website.
You're
not talking about the whole policy at all.
Google
does.
Google does 1.5 billion searches a year.
Right.
A day.
Yeah.
1.5 billion.
Right.
And these guys can't get 300 million people
Is it
sign
as
up.
unsafe as they say it is? I mean, I keep on hearing, but I haven't seen anything.
It's
being
in
hacked
a word pathetic. And the I think if you were to talk to anybody in the website design industry and offer them $300 million or whatever it was that the government paid for it, they'd say, "Hey, I could build a website that's 10 times better for 1/10 the price.
Yeah, right.
Let me help out here."
Yeah.
And I think the real problem there was that the government did not want to get the private industry involved. They didn't want to get help from companies like Google, like Cisco, like Oracle, companies that really know what they're doing. The government thought that they could do it better, which is typically a problem.
Thank goodness we know how to fight wars, 'cause that's about the only thing we can do very well. All right, we'll be back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and especially YouTube.
I saw a bunch of information on that phone you had there.
What
You sure
information?
it's secure?
It's funny you should say that. And let's ask Scott this question. So, in the last month or so, my phone has been sending multiple text messages. I push it once, it sends it out 5 times to somebody on their end. Just doing weird stuff. And I think it's probably hacked, but I have all these security programs, and I got Lookout and Absolute software and all these things, and I still think it's probably something going on. I mean, how do you know? You don't know.
You don't hear
You
a lot
don't
about
really know,
viruses
but,
on the phones, do you?
No, it's difficult to tell. I would say the technical explanation for that is it's broken. So,
Thank you, security expert. Appreciate that. All right, let's talk about social networking and engineering.
Sure.
We've talked about this with my nieces. I keep telling you, don't turn your GPS on your phone and tell your boyfriend goodnight, because the guy that's not your boyfriend knows not where you live, right? But it's really worse than that. Just tell us some stuff that's going on.
It is really, and one of the things that's most important is protecting your privacy, protecting your location, protecting your personal safety. And in order to do that, you need to make sure that your online identity and all of your online properties, if you will, are well protected. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is that when they create a password, they typically use their dog's name, their cat's name, their birthday, their mom's name, and so on. Whether it's on Facebook and so or Twitter, whatever account it is that they're using. Social engineering basically means hackers that sit around peeling away the layers of the onion for all of these different services to uncover this guy's got a dog named Fido, this guy's birthday is this.
They look at your profiles.
Of course,
pictures,
they look at your profile. They pick
your
all
date
of
of birth
this
you
stuff
put
up.
on Facebook that you shouldn't do. Yeah,
Now,
okay.
there's a wonderful video that I'm going to send you the link to that you can post on your website that shows a kind of a pseudo TV studio setup, and you got a guy in there who looks like a mentalist. He's thinking about how he can read people's minds, and they bring people in off the street, and he's got an earpiece in because it's TV, and he's telling them all about their lives. And you got a red motorcycle for Christmas last week, and you have a blue tattoo on the back of your calf, and these people are totally flipped out. They can't figure out how he did it. And at the end of the commercial that they're showing here, they pull down the curtain, and here are these 4 or 5 guys sitting at computers on Facebook, Twitter, and they got all of this information right off people's personal profiles. So if you are going to create a password, be smart about it. The first rule for creating a password is don't use your name, your dog's name, your address, your birthday, anything like that. The second rule is make it long. The longer it is, the more difficult it is for a hacker to remember. Make sure it's got one uppercase, one lowercase, some numbers. Make sure it's got a special symbol in it. Some people like to put a question mark or an exclamation point, or whatever it is. You do all of those things, and you are going to reduce the incidence of hacking on your personal profiles by a factor of 1,000.
How fast can somebody crack a password? Not the way you're talking about it by trying to figure it out yourself, but there's actually programs that go through a dictionary and just go bing, bing, bing.
That's
Minutes.
right. Yeah, there are what's called a brute force attack, and a brute force attack from a standard desktop PC can go through billions of combinations in just a couple of minutes.
Wow.
So dictionary entries, any word that's actually found in a dictionary, you're toast right away.
Right.
So you really need, and there's a website that you can go to called howstrongismypassword.com.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
And you can enter that, and it'll tell you strong, weak, very strong.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to get a gauge of how strong your password is so that you can change it if you have to or if you want to, which is pretty good policy. Nobody really does it as often as you should. It's kind of like changing the batteries in your smoke alarm.
Yeah.
Everybody says to do it every 6 months, but people only do it when the alarm starts beeping.
My
Or
brain
you
changes it
forget
for
it.
me because my memory's going, so I have to always reset them, which is not a bad thing, actually. But
That's right.
one thing I did find, and I just do not remember the websites, but I do know there are some major players in the internet business. They will not let you put underscore. They will not let you put a question mark. No, you can't do that. I mean, I think, really, that's password
Bad.
101.
Yeah,
And these big sites don't do it for what reason. They wrote some algorithm that doesn't allow that symbol to work on their code. It just it's really weird. So you got to be creative. You got to come up with something, the letters mean a word or a phrase or whatever.
A phrase, phrase would be really good. If you're into bike riding like I am, Sunday ride up the hill or whatever it is.
I was
Let me
wrong.
write that down.
There you go, write that one down.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Something like that is probably a better way of doing it than just saying, Fido 25.
Yeah.
What do you think about the little flash drives that plug in and supposedly they keep your passwords encrypted and it's like a password bank and it authenticates before you go to a website? Are they worth it?
Yeah, I think that any form of encryption is a good idea. It's kind of like the business that you're in security. Any kind of burglar alarm on a home is better than no burglar alarm at all. A persistent and determined professional is going to get into a home or a business no matter what kind of system you put up there. The job of the security system in the house, just like the key that you plug in, the flash drive or whatever the case may be that you use, the job is to send that guy next door. This is too strong for me to break. This is too much protection. I'm going to go next door. I'm going to go to the next profile and try and break that. So I'd say if you don't do anything else, that's a good step to take. But there are other measures that you should take, like password protection.
Actually brings up a good question. The flash drives that everybody uses. I mean, that there's a ton of information on there. Is there any way of protecting those flash drives?
There is. Yeah, there is, Paul. The way to do it is through a process called encryption, which basically takes all of the information that you have on there and hashes it up into a big mess that nobody can decipher unless you have the correct password for it. But again, you're at the mercy of your password. If you encrypt your flash drive and it's got all this valuable information on there and you have Fido 25 as your password, somebody's going to crack it.
Yeah.
So you really want to make sure that you have a solid password on your flash drive as well. But you can encrypt those, and you can do the same thing with your hard drive as well. I don't know how it works on Windows, but on Mac computers there's a process called File Vault, and it just encrypts the entire hard drive. So even if my computer is stolen, unless the password is entered when somebody logs in, they can't get anything off.
We used
that
to use
hard drive.
pretty good privacy, PGP. Remember?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
128 length
good.
numbers.
128-bit
Pretty hard to crack that.
encryption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're starting with our passwords, is there anything better than a password that we're not thinking about?
Well,
I don't know, something on top of your hardware, so to speak, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what we started to talk about before, is this authentication process using either 2 or more factors of authentication. If you have a Gmail account, a Facebook account, or any other popular email service or website account, almost all of them now offer some form of multi-factor authentication. Use it. It makes it really easy to protect your privacy because even if it's not as good as what TextPower offers, and I don't think it is, it's still better than nothing.
Yeah, no, I started using Google's and Facebook's version of that. And you can have a text, you can have a phone call picture.
They send you the text
Yeah.
to your phone.
So my phone goes off at 4:30 in the morning that somebody's trying to get my Facebook account
There you go.
from
Damn, that was me.
East Awful Gosh somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, well, I wasn't up at 4:30 in the morning. What's going on?
Right.
And it worked. To this day, I think I have the IP address, but I can't get any further than that. Who it was? But they were trying to make. I think you have to do 3 attempts, and they kind of start kicking
Now,
you
is
out.
this
Right?
something that you actually have to ask for, or is it?
There's an
something that's
option on
available
the
there?
webpage that you
Okay.
can
Yeah.
turn on, and then once you do, you have to authenticate for the first time using a code that they send you, and then you enter that code so that they know that you got it, it's your phone, they verify all that. But then every time that you log in after that from a different computer or a different location, if you prefer, a different Wi-Fi network or something like that, you make sure that, or rather they will ensure your security by sending you a code so that you can then enter it into
See,
Google.
everybody should be using that.
Oh,
Yeah,
Google calls you on
absolutely.
the phone, and they a number from New York calls, and then a woman speaks a number, and you have to put that in the computer.
Right.
And
It's
and
another
is this
option.
free?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's free.
Okay.
They're hard to find though. they're buried in the menu. You got to
They
kind of
are.
go on. When you set the account up, they ask you, but after
Yeah.
if you pass it, it's hard to go back and
So I
find it.
wonder why that is. They actually don't want you using it.
Don't get me
or-
started on how
Okay.
easy Google is not to use. Okay, I mean, they rule the world, but they got some problems on their
Yeah.
menus. But I found something interesting on YouTube today.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a job for somebody out of state, and I had to set some videos up for them.
Mm-hmm.
I marked the video to private instead of unlisted. Public, unlisted,
Yep.
private.
Mhm.
The problem with private, I can't even see it. Okay?
Yeah.
And it turns out that I have 3 YouTube accounts. I didn't even know that because every time I use a Google email address, I use SBC Global through Google, that creates a new profile. No, actually I had 4. So I use 4 email addresses through Google, including Gmail. I couldn't find which one I logged in as. It took me 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then I marked them all as unlisted, which means I can just send you a link and you can see it.
Right.
But that's an interesting thing. If you're putting up family videos of your kids running around, frolicking on vacation, I'm not so sure everybody needs to see that on YouTube. But if you mark it private or unlisted is better, then only the family members can see it.
Right. Only somebody that you proactively
Gave
send
permission
a link to can
Yeah,
actually
we
see
have to
it.
put all our dribble
Yeah.
up
I
there
mean,
because
that's a
we're
good
public.
point. I mean, I see every day people putting videos of their kids.
Yeah, it's a problem.
And it's after dealing what we dealt with.
Oh, yeah,
several
yeah.
times.
No, this- Yeah, that was
Yeah.
child molestation stuff
Pedophilia
and
stuff.
pedophilia stuff. When it first came out, Fox was in the network and internet stuff in the 90s when nobody else was doing it. And
Yeah.
They were starting back then. It was really kind of scary. So that's a good thing. I think stuff like YouTube and all that, anything you can put on there. Set your Facebook stuff to friends only.
Yeah,
I don't need.
right.
I mean, for our website, we have to have the public
Yeah.
watch us, or we're going to go under.
But
But
it's different. You're not putting your personal information up there.
well.
Well, some of it
Well,
is.
not too much of it.
Not too much, but unfortunately, sometimes things happen. And-
But there, let me just interject here
Yeah.
because there's one other thing that people can do to really protect themselves, and that is there's a process called spear phishing, which is a hacker's term for specifically going after people. They'll send you an email. You've probably gotten them. They'll send you an email. It looks for all the world like a real email that came from Wells Fargo or Bank
Yeah.
of
American
America.
Express at the moment.
American
Oh, that's a
Express.
very
It's
good one.
biggie.
Yeah, I mean, and they look legitimate. I mean, so
Yeah.
the quality of some of them is really
Yeah.
stunning. What you really need to avoid doing is clicking on any links in any of those emails. If you get an email from American Express that says, "Oh, we're having trouble with your account. Click this link and come here and enter your password and your other information, your social security number and all that." Don't do that.
Yeah.
You want to type in the information into the URL address bar on the browser, americanexpress.com. Go there, and if there's something on that website that says, yeah, we've had a problem with your account, so forth, then go ahead and work with it. But there isn't a legitimate business in the world that's ever going to ask you for your password. They'll ask you to reset your password, but you need to be very careful when you get an email from a facility, a business, or something that looks like a business. Spear phishing is a very, very dangerous process.
I got an email from Windows Live I'm going to ask you about.
Okay.
Because I've used Windows Live once 10 years ago, and somebody stole my password according to them. And I think it's fake. I want to ask you about it.
Okay.
Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com with Chuck Harold. What was my name again at the beginning? Chuck Hide the Hooch. No, Chuck Hide the Hooch Harold.
It's
And
not as easy as Tally Ho.
you got to get a new nom de plume there. Tally ho is. You got to come up with a new one.
Oh, that's good.
How come I come up with a new one every week? And by the way,
Because
the
I'm
letter
satisfied with the one I've got.
the letter H is
See?
not easy to rhyme with. Okay, so all right. My guest is Scott Goldman of TextPower.com, and we're talking about all the ways you can really get in trouble on the internet. Before the break, we were talking about spear phishing. So here's what I got the other day. Almost fooled me. I tend to just delete everything, except when I get a past due bill, sometimes you get in trouble doing that. But it was from Windows Live, and I may have used Windows Live 10 years ago once. I don't remember if I did. It said somebody has, this was very clever, somebody has hacked your password in Windows Live, and you need to log in and authenticate that, so on and so forth. And I looked at the links. I did what we were talking about at the break. I hovered over the link. It looked quasi-legitimate. I mean, most things in Windows end in windows.com, not windows.com.china or whatever, right? But
Right.
for the most part, it looked pretty good. I just deleted it. Now, let me ask you this question. If I want to open up a questionable link on my phone, am I safer? if my compromise of a phone, I throw away and buy a new one. They're not going to get into my home computer through my phone unless I got some VPN or something. Are you safe looking at a bad link on your phone? Do the hackers care to hack your phone?
Or an iPad, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, there are two different kinds of bad links. Let's make sure that we define both of those. One of them, the kind that you're talking about, is a form of spear phishing where if you click the link, it takes you to a nefarious website where they ask you, it still looks like a Windows Live site
Right.
or it looks like an American Express site, and they ask you, now, I need to make sure enter your password here, and by the way, how about refreshing your social security number?
Right.
That's a bad thing, and whether you do it from your phone or from your desktop computer, it's still bad.
Right.
Now, the other type of link that is bad, that is mostly dangerous on the desktop computer and not on your phone, as you correctly point out, is something that's got what people in the industry called an executable file, meaning that when you click on the link, it makes something happen.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that you see when you launch an application on a Windows machine. There's a .exe at the end of it, and it opens up and it starts decompressing and it does a bunch of stuff. Bad, very bad.
Right.
Never want to touch anything like that. It won't work on your phone.
The code doesn't work, in other
The
words.
code, exactly.
Oh, that's okay.
The code doesn't work on your phone.
So is that a good practice to find something on your desktop and say, let me check that on my phone to not damage my network or my desktop, my work thing?
I think a better practice is just to get into the habit of not clicking on links in emails.
I can't do it.
that
I'm
come-
an investigator. I have to know it, right? Paul, you know what I'm talking
I'm
about, right?
sending him links all the time.
You have to know what it is. You have to try and beat them, right? Now, what happened to the days when you knew that your porn came from an American server and you could just roll over those links and say, well, that's an authentic American porn site, but now you don't know where they are. I mean, well, I'm only half joking, right? Because those things are nefarious for all kinds of malicious
Oh, they
code.
are.
And never do that. Just
So-
go back
so-
to Playboy
so I
magazine,
can't?
folks. It's really,
Oh, damn.
no, it's.
That's
Well, remember all the cases we had at Fox where those pop-up windows would just destroy a computer?
Yeah.
I mean, when it first came out, it was just terrible. And talk about criminals, though, that we have the guys that want to get your passwords and get your identity stuff, but there's some actual, crime elements out there that are doing this stuff, using these codes and things like that.
Sure. I mean, this is really today's version of organized crime.
It is.
When you look at the mafia and the Cosa Nostra, whatever it was back in the 50s and 60s, the gangs of people that would control certain businesses.
I don't know anything about that. I'm not verifying that. Go ahead.
You were never an informer
I-
for the
I don't-
CIA.
I did not say that word to my Italian friends.
But at the same time, in today's world, we have kind of an informal mafia, whether it's in China or in Romania or wherever the case may be. I don't mean to cast aspersions on any one particular nationality, but when you have all of the hacking coming from, the vast majority of hacking coming from just a couple of locations, that's what you get accustomed to. So there are groups that really try to control these hacking centers. So if people put together all of these hacking programs and these nefarious links and so forth, there are upper level management, if you will, that try to control all of that. The lone hacker sitting in a garage or basement somewhere, off in the wilds of Montana, I'm sure that
Just doing
happens,
his thing.
but it's more or less a myth in terms of what happens to most of the people most of the time. There are going to be hackers that are, the lone wolf. They're out there by themselves. They're, super savants, but they're a little bit wacko, and they'll try and hack in to just do damage to things. Yes, there are those people, and they can be very dangerous. But for the most part, the real dangers in hacking, in your privacy, in your financial accounts, in your healthcare records, and all that, comes from these bigger organizations that work towards a goal of disrupting all of those databases and pulling all of that information out so they can sell them.
I mean, talking about organised crime, I was late, sort of semi-late, doing my taxes. So I went into the IRS website yesterday and actually, paid through the credit card. Now, what really concerned me was the fact that you have to put your social security number in there. Is there a way of telling that you're actually in the right website? I mean, I closed it and opened it several times and, all sorts of stuff, but it's pretty concerning when you're going into a government website like that, and you do have to put your social security number in.
Well, eventually, I guess the old saying applies, you have to trust somebody somewhere. You want to limit that trust as much as you possibly can. In this instance, if you type into the web browser www.irs.gov,
Which is what I did.
which is
Yeah.
what it is. When you go to that website, that's the real thing.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
from there, you're pretty much assured
Yeah.
that you're safe.
Okay.
If it works.
Yeah, I'm not going there, Chuck.
That's right.
As long as it's not the affordable healthcare website.
Yeah, no comment on that one.
So let's talk about browser malware. People throw these words around: man in the middle, man in the browser,
Yeah.
Trojans. See here, I'm
I want to know who comes up with these names, actually.
Well, it must be somebody in Hollywood. I'm sure it's very clever. We've talked about this. I've really considered switching to becoming an evil genius criminal because
Actually,
I
I
think
thought
I'd
you
make
was,
more
but-
money that way.
Well,
But
it's
here's
like-
what I would do if I was going to take over America, which I know there are people that want to do that, and I'm not a crazy conservative. Don't send me any emails. This is just common sense, right? You can't march in here with a bunch of tanks and planes and take us over. We're too powerful. What are you going to do? Here's what I would do. I would just spend years and years and years trying to figure out how to get into the grid and just turn the switch off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, turn off the switch, erase everybody's bank records. That's the ultimate goal. But before I did that, you know what I'd do? I'd finance the whole darn thing with Scott Goldman's credit card. Because I'd steal your credit cards for years, right?
Right.
Get $500 off that before you get caught, and I think that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been evidence that Al Qaeda uses a lot of this stuff to finance some of their operations by, cybercrime and things like that. And I think that's what's going on. I really think it's only going to get worse. People say, well, we're working on that to fix it. I think it's the tip of the iceberg, the start of it. And you could easily finance all your criminal enterprises by stealing $1 million a day off the web, and then figure out a way to turn off the big switch in America, and that's it. We're done. We're too dependent. We got to get back to a tin can and a wire for redundancy and backup on this kind of stuff.
Well, I'm not sure I want to go there, but I empathize
But
with
you know what I'm
your
saying? You got to have
concern.
something. Yeah.
I empathize with
Well,
your
hasn't
concern.
there been a couple of cases where they've actually attacked, the power systems and stuff?
Yes, and in fact, my company, TextPower, provides emergency alerting systems to utilities. So we keep a pretty close tab on what's going on in the utility markets.
So how does that work? If there's a
A hack or something, they get an alert or
Yeah, well, in our case, what we do is we provide an integrated system with the utilities if there's an outage, and they want to inform 50,000 people in a matter of a couple of minutes. Our system sends out 5,000 messages a minute, so we can send out tons of messages to people and alert them that there's an outage or when the outage will be, when power will be
or that
restored.
SecurityGuyRadio.com is on next
Or
Monday.
that security.
Yeah,
guy.
look at that.
We could probably work something
Oh,
out.
okay,
We'll
good.
talk about that afterwards. Sorry, did I say that out loud? But what you really want to do in that case is you want to have protection. Much like the security business, there's a lot of metaphors here I think that fit. You want to have as much perimeter protection as you
Right,
possibly
right.
can. Keep people from getting into the actual physical facilities of the utilities, because that's where a lot of the damage can be done. And from a cyber standpoint, we have to be really vigilant. I don't think that the country as a whole has been vigilant enough. Some individual companies, some of the larger companies, whether it's Con Ed or Duke Energy and all of them, they spend a lot of money protecting their own systems. But the larger electrical grid that is really comprised of just three major components throughout the United States, those three major components are controlled in three centralized areas. And that larger electrical grid is vulnerable, and it really needs to be protected in as strong a way as possible. Otherwise, we do run the risk of getting hacked, if you will,
Right.
as a country.
Yeah. So are they using things like, man in the middle and malware and stuff to hack the grid, or is this kind of thing is more like your home computer that's a problem, right?
A lot of that is when you get to the level of utilities, banks, and financial institutions, New York Stock Exchange, they're not susceptible to malware, or not most of the time malware, or man-in-the-middle attacks, which is, you go to one of those porn sites that you mentioned and you open up a picture or a video and it installs all of this bad stuff on your computer that you don't even know about, and then a month or 6 months later, somebody a million miles away starts controlling your computer to do things that you don't even know it's happening in the background. They're using it to send out millions of emails, or they're using it to try and hack into somebody else's system.
Your home computer becomes a server for them.
That's exactly right.
That's a
So-
denial of service attack works. They can link them all together, distribute the denial of service attack, right?
Exactly
Yeah,
right.
interesting.
Exactly right. Yep.
So what do we do for the common soul at home? Here's what I don't like about the software that protects all this stuff. It slows your computer down to a crawl. What do you
Yeah,
recommend
not
is the
bad.
best thing for that stuff?
Yeah, you're really
Norton,
not,
I mean, they're the big guy, but is there anything else that's better?
you're talking about things like Symantec and McAfee and all
Yeah.
of the antivirus things like that. Yeah, they're good and they do work, but when they get bogged down, it can be frustrating. Certainly the best thing to do is not to have to put out the fire, but to be fire preventive. And so in the case of security for the home person, you got to follow those basics. You really need to keep your password private. You need to make it a solid
That's really
password.
better than all that other stuff, isn't it? In a way.
There's a lot of benefit that comes from having a strong password, different passwords. You can, for example, one of the things that you could do on your home computer is you could use a password management piece of software like 1Password or Agile Bits makes a couple of others that will create a hashed password for you and at the same time manage it so the next time you go to the website, puts it in for you.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. I have to practice saying Security Guy Radio because I slur it together and people know what I'm saying. Should it be
Perhaps I should say it.
Security Guy Radio, Security Guy Radio, Security Guy Radio? What do you think? Brian, what do you think? What do you think, Brian? Where should I put the emphasis? Security
And
Guy
by the way, it's
Radio.
one word.
How about securityguyradio.com?
Well, you know what the problem is now? You're making it 2 or 3 words. It's got to be the same word.
SecurityGuyRadio.com.
SecurityGuyRadio.com.
SecurityGuyRadio.com. All right.
There you go.
securityguyradio.com.
Just
The way
listen to it. So
everybody
the,
else is
got
going to
it.
say it.
well, I want to make sure that my IRS deductions this year are legitimate. So please go to my website. Please. All right. Welcome back with Mr. Scott Goldman. Now you're the president, CEO. What are you?
I am the co-founder. and
Co-founder.
CEO.
All right.
TextPower. I'm fascinated by this authentication
Oh,
thing.
thank you.
This is going to be big.
Yeah.
This is going to
We
be
hope
big.
so. Thanks.
And we heard it second on Security Guy
Yes.
Radio. Probably not first,
Right.
but at least second or
Yeah.
third at least. That's good.
It's been
Right,
top
good
secret
news.
until tonight. Sure.
That's right. All right, so let's go back to some more things we can do. What do you think is the single biggest threat going on right now out there? I mean, that's a big loaded question, but
The
what
single
what
biggest-
scares you the most as far as all this cybersecurity and what's the next big thing people are going to start going after? Cause this problem?
Probably 2 things. I think the first thing from kind of a global basis is what we started to talk about earlier, turning over control of the internet naming system to a broad committee that is comprised of countries, governments that are, somewhat less open and free than ours are.
Let me say it
Yeah, go ahead.
for you. The axis of evil. We're not going to turn it over to, those countries that want to kill us. All right, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
My idea, I talked about at the beginning of the show, is a simple problem. Let's just erase this domain name for this country, and therefore you have no access to the world because it's a global market, right? Tell me something else that I'm not thinking about that's pretty scary with that concept.
Censorship.
Oh, well, that's true.
I mean, when you start dealing with a country like Iran or China or Cuba that decides to censor their residents, they or their citizens, they have the ability right now because they control their own domain names, their own internet, their own wireless networks to censor comments, contents. China has, literally hundreds, if not thousands of people that look at comments. They are physically reading comments, emails, tweets, Facebook postings, or Weibo, which is the equivalent of Facebook in China, reading all of those postings and then censoring them out. And
Before they're transmitted.
before they're transmitted, they never get to the internet.
That's why your post takes 3 days to get out. Because
Or something like
yeah,
that. And if the internet naming convention we called ICANN, ICANN, if that organization was turned over to a global consortium of countries that all had the power to vote and vote it down and so forth, you wind up with a situation similar to what you've got in the UN with the Security Council. Everybody wants to censure someone or, invoke sanctions.
Like censor a whole country.
Except for, Russia,
interesting.
China, or somebody else.
Right.
So if you wind up with that similar situation on the internet, it can work in reverse. If the U.S. had a part of it, and let's say China, Russia, and a few other bad guys get together, and they decide that they want to censor certain content, and they don't want to let educational content in, they don't want to let open discussion come in. They don't want to let free publications come in. They could do that if they had complete control over the Internet naming network. By refusing to do that, I think that the U.S., it was just announced today, I think that the U.S. said, whoa, wait a minute, we're not going
I
there
thought we was doing
yet.
it.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
we still have 4 years left on that contract.
Right.
We're not about to release all of that. They took a step back, which I think was a very smart idea, because this is very, very dangerous ground.
It's very serious. I mean, I'm trying to think of an evil plot for a screenplay on this, because what you talked about is bad enough, but it is reverse. If the Internet is mostly free, nothing's completely anything, right? But that's because we know that China's going to censor stuff. We know Cuba's going to censor stuff. United States, I wish they'd censor stuff, right?
To a certain extent, we already censor it. I mean, if
Well,
you're on certain sites.
To some degree, right? But you still have mostly a free choice. But what's to keep the committee, whoever they are, from saying, you know what, you got too many .coms over here in the United States. We don't like to have those. We're going to change those and get rid of. We don't like Google.com. I mean, for God's sake, it could happen. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? It's just, why does this happen? Do people just? I'm not, I'm not the smartest bulb in the room, but I mean, I get it, and I don't understand why the government thinks that's even a remotely good idea, unless it's all part of, hold hands, roast marshmallows, globalization stuff. I don't know.
I don't know, and and if we're looking at everybody getting together and singing "Kumbaya," and that's the way we're all going to.
That's what they
work
want the world to
together,
work. Yeah,
and everybody sings the Coca-Cola Happy song.
That's right.
That's probably a great thing if you can get it to work in reality. But the fact of the matter is, we all know from a practical standpoint that's not the way the world works. So. Disallowing that, or at least stepping back on it and saying we're going to take a few years before we even talk about that again, is probably a very prudent move.
Now, what about the rest of the world, like Europe? And I mean, were they on board with this, or I mean, where was it actually coming from?
It came from us. It was our idea.
It actually came from
It
us.
was the United States' idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it originally came from us, Paul, because the control of this Internet naming organization resides with a group of people that are headquartered in the United States but are not controlled by the U.S. government. It's really kind of a free-for-all in that it's not assigned to particular governmental organizations and so forth. And, in the spirit of everybody getting along and, singing that happy song that I was telling you about, the government was saying, we should turn this over to a global entity, kind of like the UN that does such wonderful work and all that. And everybody that really understands what goes on under the hood of the Internet said, oh, my God, are you kidding?
Yeah, but public ICANN was kind of saying, oh, yeah, we think that's a great idea. I mean, some people were. It sounds kind of wacky.
But behind the scenes, not so much.
To the government, well, what can the government do about that? Are they only influential in that? I thought they had some kind of legal say-so in it somehow because of the wireless things they owned or something. That.
Well, wireless is kind of a different world, but there are restrictions to what can happen in the world of wireless because the government licenses the spectrum that wireless communications works on, whether it's a TV station or air-to-ground communication or a cellular phone. All of that spectrum is licensed with the exception of very tiny slivers that were left open for new inventive or innovative purposes, which is actually how Wi-Fi was invented.
Oh, interesting.
The government allowed a certain slice of spectrum left open just for people to kind of tinker with, and that's how Wi-Fi was actually developed. So, the history of the Internet, if you look back on it, was developed by the Defense Agency, DARPA, and it was all put together originally intended to prevent the U.S. from losing communication completely if there was a nuclear attack. So if one node, if you will, was taken out, the traffic would automatically route through another node, and that way you couldn't take out just one place and have it knock out all of that traffic. So a lot of the history, the foundation, kind of the root of the Internet really started in the U.S., and as a result, we maintained control over certain aspects of it, and we kind of formed the foundation for this naming organization, ICANN, many years ago. And we still have a fair amount of influence over it, but a lot of people will tell you that's a good thing because the U.S. is an open society. We don't censor newspapers, publications, TV shows, at least not for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's the way that it should work. You get these other countries involved, it becomes dangerous.
So your program you're going to be launching here, is it right to call it a software?
It is, yeah.
It is software, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
How is that going to, let's say everybody had that authentication. what kind of impact would that have?
Well, we think it would have.
Everybody had it.
Yeah,
I mean,
we think it would be significant because everybody's got a cell phone, right? I mean,
Everybody.
we're beyond the point where where people don't have them. So everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody can send a text message regardless of what kind of cell phone you have. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And your cell phone number typically does not change. You might change carriers. You might move from Verizon to AT&T or whatever. But typically your number remains the same. So that kind of has become the functional equivalent in today's cyber world of your Social Security number.
yeah, and it's almost like
Yeah,
it's almost like an encryption key.
That's right.
Kinda,
Yeah.
yeah.
So on your cell phone, when you have that cell phone number programmed to a new phone or you take it to a new carrier, there is a chip inside the phone into which is burned the equivalent of a fingerprint, a unique device identifier. And unless you send a text message from the correct phone with that correct fingerprint from that correct mobile number, it's never going to get to the carrier. And then from our standpoint, it never gets to us. So we believe that this forms the most secure form of authentication available. And as a result, in the battle between security and convenience, convenience always wins. And in our case, it's as convenient as just text it. You don't have to have a big learning curve. You don't have to see anything special on the screen. All you got to do is send a text message.
My guest's been Scott Goldman, Scott of TextPower.com. Is that the best website to check out?
TextPower.com.
You want to give us any email addresses or anything like that?
Sure. Send email to info@textpower.com.
Excellent. You come back and let us know how it goes when you're launching.
Thank you very much.
All
I
right.
will.
Paul, this has been very
This was
interesting.
good.
Yeah.
And we've got a whole page of stuff we didn't talk about.
I know.
Again.
We always run out of time. Thanks to Mr. Bryan and his long commercials and segues. We have to cut those down, my friend. All right. Listen to us on the web at securityguyradio.com, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And follow us. Please follow us at securityguyradio.com. Until next week, this has been securityguyradio.com.
Cheers.
Good night.